Good morning. I've been a little bit under the weather. I still can't seem to shake all this congestion, but I'm moving on, moving forward. You know what? Don't set yourself up for failure. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. You know, as a school teacher, I see a lot of this kind of thing a lot of time. People setting themselves up for failure. I'll have a kid say, well, I didn't do my homework, Mr. Jeffers, because I didn't understand it. Now, this is despite the fact that I've explained it 5 or 6 times, and I have went over it again, and I've given them time to work in class, and I'm willing to help them on an individual basis if they need it. So when they come to me the next day with the whole, I didn't do my homework because I didn't understand it thing, I'm a little bit skeptical. Let's put it to you that way. It's either they don't understand it or they just failed to have the motivation to ask for extra help, which we're very willing to give. So here's the thing with that. They set themselves up for failure. How many times do we do that as human beings in our walk, in our life? How do we do that? I do it a lot. You know what? Maybe I'm going to lose a little weight, and I need to be careful what I eat. And then I end up at a pizza party or a buffet. That's setting yourself up for failure, isn't it? How are you going to resist such tasty delights, especially this time of year? It's pretty difficult. You know what? I think we need to think about what our reaction is going to be to things before we get into situations. Now, this is a little bit sensitive, but maybe you run into someone who is tempting you in a way that you don't want to be tempted. Maybe that is through an illicit affair. You better have some sort of answer, like, no, I'm not doing that sort of thing, in your mind. And you don't want to set yourself up for failure. You want to flee. The Bible tells us to flee from such things. Think about this. When Joseph was in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, what did he do? He fled. He fled in such haste that he left his coat behind, and then she was able to falsely accuse him. But the thing is if you set yourself up for failure, he could just have easily succumbed to her wiles and ended up sinning against God. But he had determined in his heart he was not going to sin against his God. How many of us do things in different arenas in our life that set ourselves up for failure? Maybe certain things trigger you. Maybe you shouldn't watch seductive television programming. Maybe that might lead someone to consume pornography. That's not a good thing. Maybe you are struggling with alcoholism. Well, I don't think hanging out in a bar is a good idea. Especially if that's your weakness. If you're addicted to drugs, maybe when you're trying to get off those drugs, you need to get different friends or have different habits. Do you see what I'm getting at? Sometimes we wonder why we fail, but yet we have set ourselves up for failure. It's something really to think about. That's why God tells us to flee such things. When we come in contact with the things that we know might drag us into the realm of sin, to flee from it, to get away from it, because we are weak. Hey, I don't know about you, but if you're honest with yourself, I'll bet you know what your weaknesses are. I know what mine are. I'll bet you know what yours are. Sometimes we don't want to admit those weaknesses, but I bet we know what they are. So why wouldn't we take active measures to stay away from such things that could cause us to fail if we truly love God? And I'm talking to myself here, as well as you. If we truly love Christ and we want to serve Him, why would we not actively try to stay away from things that trigger us, that drag us into that realm, that tempt us? Rather than sometimes we find ourselves dancing among it, dancing among things that tempt us and pull us in. And take our eyes off God, well, guess what happens? We fail. When Peter was walking across the water toward Jesus, when he took his eyes off of Jesus and looked at the storm, That's when he began to sink. Never take your eyes off the prize. Never take your eyes off Jesus. And I can warn you this, and I can warn myself of this. And invariably, we end up sinning because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That doesn't mean that we can't pick ourselves up, struggle through, and continue to do well. Maybe it's your temper. Maybe you can't control how you react to things. Know what your triggers are, whether it's anger, lust, gluttony, whatever it might be. I think we know our weaknesses. And God has told us to flee such things. And remember, he has made a way of escape for us from all temptation. And it's up to us if we walk down that path of escape, or we allow the things that tempt us to drag us into the darkness. But remember, if you fail and if you sin, turn back to God. Repent and pick yourself up. Get rid of your guilt and move forward for the kingdom. God still loves you, even when you're not perfect. But keep trying. Have a great day. Be kind to each other. See you next time.